Hey guys, Mike here, and right now I'm standing next to our pink lemon, Eureka lemon. We planted this less than 2 years ago on our wedding day, and it's already grown over 6 feet tall. The reason we believe that it did so well is because we've planted it in a mixture of our soil and biochar. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to show you guys how to make it, how long it takes, what we add into it, and then like how to apply it. Although biochar was not the only thing we added in here, we believe it's a big part of why it's doing so well. So stick around and find out how we do it. One more thing I forgot to mention about this tree. We haven't fertilized it since we planted it. So for 2 years it's been here not being fertilized at all. It doesn't even have any mulch, any support species, nothing. It's just grown amazing. So here we are at the chicken's roost. This is where they sleep all night. So what I've done is build a box right under where they sleep, and that's where we're going to add the biochar. You could do this with other animals. We're using chickens because that's what we have, but I mean, I'm sure you could do it with any other animal. I like to add a bucket full of biochar, and this has been sifted through a 1/2-inch screen. You could also sift it through a 1/4-inch screen if you want smaller biochar, but I just find it really hard to crush it all up that small. So I also like to add some compost in at this stage, and you could really put as much as you want, but this will start the inoculation process and it'll stay in there until we're ready to empty it out. So I just sift it right there through the same 1/2-inch screen. The compost that we're using is part of our chicken house composting system. We made a video about it you could check out. We'll link it in the description and up here in this card. The reason I sift this beforehand is so that I don't have to do it after. It's going to be full of chicken poop, and I'm not going to want to sift chicken poop. Some of it's still going to be fresh and it's kind of gross, so I sift everything now, that way I don't have to do it later. So I'm just going to mix all this together and just flatten it out. So the only thing you'll have to do now is occasionally, like once a week, all the poop is going to pile up on the back because that's where their butts hang, and overnight it just piles up. So once a week I come in and I just pull it off and kind of mix it in with everything else. The chickens will do a lot of that, but somehow you still get like a mountain of poop on the back that you want to start to mix in. So now it's been about 2 months since we filled this container with biochar and compost. I like to wait until the volume has doubled inside, so you'll have about half of it chicken manure and the other half biochar with a little bit of compost. And that way you know you have a good ratio for the biochar to be inoculated. So now that we've emptied out our container full of the chicken manure and biochar and the compost, we're going to add another few ingredients. These are kind of optional, but this is what I like to add. We're going to add some fish hydrolysate powder and kelp. This is not really as a fertilizer, it's more for a fungal food, so that we're growing more fungal microbes in the biochar. And then this one may be just for people in Hawaii, but I use borax because the soil here is said to be very low in boron. So this will add a little bit. I only use a teaspoon though, so not too much. Goes a long way. And then the last thing I use is diatomaceous earth, and it's really just because we have it laying around. I bought a giant food grade bag of it to treat the chickens' mites, and now they never get mites anymore, so like I have a giant bag. So I just use it for this. Really nothing else but just this. 2 teaspoons fish hydrolysate. I'm gonna put 2 of the diatomaceous earth, maybe even 3, and we're just gonna use the rest of it because there wasn't much left. And then the borax, you really don't want to use any more than a teaspoon in this mixture, so just that there. That's good. And then the last one we got is the kelp. And just really, I'm gonna eyeball it, but just like a tablespoon is good.
Fat tablespoon.
Fat tablespoon. Shake it up good. The reason I like to mix it all in water first is I feel like you get a more even distribution of them because we're using such small amounts. Mixing it, it may end up, you know, in one area and not the other, but doing this, you can spread it all in there and evenly distribute it. Another thing I'm going to add in this mix is worm castings, because why not? We have it. It's another great source of microbes. So we're just going to sprinkle this in. And there's a beetle in there. Give it a little mix, just a little, because we're going to really be mixing this up a lot once we put the water in. So because this is super dry, we need to add a lot of water. You want to dial it in just right so it's not too wet and not too dry. Just enough for the microbes to get more active. And so for that, I have this. I don't know how much I'm going to put in. I'm just going to feel it out. I'm going to mix it. Mix it around. It's super dry, so it's going to take a lot of water. Kind of like mixing concrete. I really don't want to get in there too much because it is chicken poop and I don't really want to touch it, but it's looking pretty good to me. One thing I will say is you could probably go a little bit more than you think because the biochar was dry and it's going to really absorb a lot of moisture. Even if it looks a little wet now, it still takes a little bit of time for that water to penetrate into the biochar. So I used approximately a little more than 2 gallons total with the mixture of all the ingredients and the just jug of water. I would say maybe even more because this is just about empty. It is empty, so. So I would say a good way to tell is that if it looks really wet, but there's no water on the bottom of your wheelbarrow. So you don't really have any extra coming out the bottom here. So the reason you want to get it so wet is so that the biochar is inoculated with all the microbes, and the microbes come alive when you put the water in. If it was just dry, nothing would really be happening. The water really activates everything. It's got a good smell. Strong. So the last thing we're going to do with this is we're going to put it all in this bag, same bag that the food came in, and we're going to let it sit there for at least 2 weeks. This way it's going to have plenty of time to marinate. All the microbes are going to move into that biochar like it's a hotel, and they're just going to set up camp there. You got everything, all their nutrients, and they're going to fill it up. So when you're filling it up, you want to not pack it at all. You want as much air space in there as possible. You don't want this to go anaerobic. If it does start to go anaerobic, you could empty it out and kind of dry it out a little bit, put it back in the bag. But I've never really had a problem. You just like close this up, let it sit, forget about it for 2 weeks. I know you're probably going to want to use this right away, but don't. 2 weeks minimum. So my favorite way to apply the biochar is directly in the ground when you're planting a tree. I use about a gallon-sized pot worth of the biochar and just mix it all in and plant the tree. That way, as the tree's growing, it's all in the ground, around the roots and everything, and I feel like that's the best. The second best option is to do it afterwards, and you're just going to sprinkle it around the tree and cover all of it with mulch. And I've done that with some trees, seen pretty good results. Like I said, the best way is probably to do it beforehand when you're planting the tree, but second best is to do it after, sprinkle it around and cover it with mulch. One last thing you want to note is that biochar will stay in the soil for possibly thousands of years. So this is something you only need to add once. They say around 10% is the optimal ratio. 10 to 25 is what they say, but I would lean more towards the lower side. Adding too much could have negative effects, and that's the last thing you want, right? So just stick around the 10%. I think you'll be safe. The other thing is, research has shown that biochar doesn't work good in every type of soil and every environment. Here we get lots of rainfall and we have acidic soils, so it works great here. You might want to research a little bit about your area, see if it's something that'll work good for you. But besides that, that's all I got. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Comment, like, share, subscribe, and bye. Ask your doctor if biochar is right for you.
Is biochar right for you? Yes. Yes.